That's a very good question. I think in a few weeks ago, they tried to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, negotiating directly potentially with Iran at the time when Iran wanted to start this new system, this new equation of a tolling boost system. And so some countries were ready to play the game. And what the US blockade did was to delegitimize and negate this new equation. I think right now, Qatar might try to have this safe passage. I think some countries will wait to see that it's really secure, especially for tankers, commodity tankers that are more expensive. I think they will still wait a little bit.
Help us with Arabian risk, I should say. Who is on Qatar's side? Is it Saudi Arabia is linked to Doha versus the UAE? Explain that politics.
So I think Qatar has been the closest Gulf countries to Iran. And that has been very different than Saudi Arabia or the UAE.
I did not know.
Because Qatar and Iran are sharing the world's largest gas field. And Qatar has always depended on Iran also for the Strait of Hormuz and has always taken a perspective of appeasement, negotiation with Iran.
So, Leslie, how does the world open up the Strait of Hormuz? It's not the Secretary of Defense saying it's open because we all see the same maps and the ships are just sitting there. How do you actually open it up? How does that happen, do you think?
So, as you know, we have two blockades, and either it's like 1, 2, 3, we lift it together. I mean, right now, the thing is that we're in a stalemate.
Yep.
And I think the US is trying to change this equation and try to move things to fasten, because the reality is that Iran is good at negotiation, good at propaganda, good at expansion through the proxies in the region, but not good at winning wars. They are good at inflicting damage. And right now, I think the US government is trying to end the way Iran is trying to exhaust not only its own economy, but the global economy, and trying to change the equation.
So in reality, it seems like, again, we're all learning the same maps of the Strait of Hormuz. We now have a pretty good understanding. It's a very narrow passageway, and it seems like Iran holds most, if not all, the cards in terms of safe passage through there. If I'm an insurance company, I'm not letting my ship go through there.
Yeah, I think eventually what the US is hoping is that other countries will join this kind of coalition. So the US is taking the leadership, and some courageous insurance companies and allies from the US will take the risk. I think that there is a military strategy here to protect the tankers with air capabilities. I mean, and going through the Oman path.
Okay, the Oman Pass, let's bring it back to the secretary who has to deal with the politics, while the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Admiral Cooper and others have to deal with our military as well. Link natural gas and your expertise, Leslie Palti-Guzman, into how America really doesn't want to be in the war. America's joining what I think in Patrick McHenry's old congressional district, it's $4, $5 a gallon. In LA, it's $7 a gallon. Link the American reality into the geopolitics of the Gulf.
Yeah. So I think luckily, the US is a one of the world's largest oil and gas producer now. So it means that the US is the most isolated right now compared to many other countries around the world. It doesn't mean that there is not a risk of inflation, higher gasoline prices. But if you look at Henry Hub prices are below $3 per million BTU.
Yep.
So, generally speaking, U.S. economy is in a much better position than the rest of the world.
So, again, if the Strait were to be magically opened tomorrow, how do you think oil prices would react? And is there, a longer-term premium now put into oil coming out of that part of the world, do you think?
So generally speaking, I think markets have been optimistic. They are waiting, 1 week, 2 weeks, like that things may start to be more hopeful and open up. I think, now by mid-June, that's kind of the new thinking that things could really start to flow again. But that definitely by the summer, there will be an improvement.
So I guess who kind of blinks here? Is it a ship owner? Is it an insurance company? Is it a captain on the bridge of one of these ships? How does this actually happen, do you think?
It's going to be a mix, but I think it's going to be countries, like allies from the United States that are going to show a good gesture and say, okay, we trust that we have the confidence to go.
But within all your abilities and skills, the entire orbit, including the press conference we just heard, circles around the president. Do you see a president who in any way wants to do any of the processes you did at Tufts years ago? I just don't see the linkage of Kissinger's 1,200 pages, we all read it, diplomacy with this president of the United States.
Well, again, I think that, the surrender, we don't know if it will happen or not, but I think it's too early to call it, a quagmire. I think many outcomes are still possible, and I think the negotiation are still, a possibility, as well as kinetic restart the war. Both are on the table, and it's going to depend on what Iran also wants to do. I think, the conditions of ending the nuclear and so on, that's still on the table.
Okay, but Paul wants to get in here with more intelligent questions. As simple as I can, at what price of a gallon of gas does this dialogue change?
I think for now, I see a lot of determination from the president, and he's not willing to back down.
Liquefied natural gas.
I call it national gas, too.
Yeah,
I've done
LNG. That's why they have this nice acronym, LNG. That seems to be an increasingly valuable commodity here. Talk to us about the LNG market, because the U.S. is a big player in that.
Yeah, so definitely right now the U.S. is a big winner with LNG. So the U.S. was already the world's largest LNG supplier, and we have the 9th liquefaction project that just started last week, and all the liquefaction plants in the U.S. are running at full capacity. The other second largest supplier is Qatar, which is right now unable to export any of its LNG. But, you started with how to make a lemonade out of sour lemons. I think Qatar is thinking ahead on how to transform this crisis into an opportunity by potentially changing its business model, moving away from the Strait of Hormuz, but at the end of the day, regaining the trust from the buyers will be key. But I think Qatar has the possibility to slow restart its liquefaction plant and then clear the glut, because we were in a glut in the LNG market.
Yep.